The Phantom of the Opera. Chapter 6. La Carlotta sings Margarita. On Friday morning, La Carlotta had her breakfast in bed. She drank her coffee and opened her morning letters. One letter had no name on it. It was very short. You are ill. You cannot sing Margarita tonight. Stay at home and don't go to the opera house. Accidents can happen. Do you want to lose your voice? Forever? La Carlotta was very, very angry. She got out of bed at once and did not finish her breakfast. This is from Christine Dyer's friends, she thought. They want her to sing again tonight. That Dyer girl is going to be sorry for this. I, La Carlotta, I am the best opera singer in Paris, and nothing is going to stop me singing Margarita tonight. At 6 o'clock that evening, the dancers were in their dressing room. They talked and laughed and put on their red and black dresses for Faust. But Meg Giry was very quiet. What's the matter, Meg? Annie sorrowfully asked. It's the opera ghost, Meg said. My mother says he's angry. She's afraid that something's going to happen tonight. Oh, pooh, the girl with black hair said. Who's afraid of an old ghost? An hour later, Monsieur Armand and Monsieur Firmin went into box 5 and sat down. They were not afraid of ghosts. Of course not. There were no ghosts in the opera house. Then Monsieur Armand saw some flowers on the floor by the door of the box. Firmin, he whispered. Did you put those flowers there? Monsieur Firmin looked. No, I didn't, he whispered back. Did you? Of course not, you fool. Shh, the music's beginning. La Carlotta did not sing for the first hour. There were no strange voices in box 5, and the two directors began to feel happier. Then La Carlotta came out onto the stage, and Monsieur Firmin looked at Monsieur Armand. Did you hear a voice just then? He asked quietly. No, Monsieur Armand said, but he looked behind him twice, then 3 times, and suddenly felt cold. La Carlotta sang, and nothing happened. Then she began a beautiful love song. My love begins to Everybody stared. What was the matter with Carlotta's voice? What was that strange noise? Cock. Carlotta stopped and began the song again. My love begins to cock. I cannot forget my cock. It was the noise of a toad. People began to talk and laugh. Monsieur Firmin put his head in his hands. Then he felt Monsieur Armand's hand on his arm. There was a voice in the box with them, a man's voice, laughing. Poor Carlotta tried again and again. I cannot forget my cock. Then the two directors heard the voice again, behind them, in front of them, everywhere. Her singing tonight is going to bring down the chandelier. The two directors looked up at the top of the opera house. Their faces were white. The famous chandelier, with its 1,000 lights, broke away from its ropes and crashed down onto the people below. That was a terrible night for the Paris Opera House. One woman was killed by the chandelier, and many people were hurt. The opera house closed for 2 weeks, and La Carlotta never sang again. Chapter 7. My Angel of Music. For a week, Raoul saw Christine every day. Some days Christine was quiet and unhappy. Some days she laughed and sang. She never wanted to talk about the opera house, or her singing, or Raoul's love for her. Raoul was very afraid for her. Who or what was this strange teacher, this man's voice, her angel of music? Then one day there was no Christine. She was not at her home, not at the opera house, no other meeting places. Raoul looked everywhere and asked everybody, where was Christine Dyer? But nobody knew. 2 days before the opera house opened again, a letter arrived for Raoul. It was from Christine. Meet me in an hour at the top of the opera house, on the 10th floor. The 10th floor of the opera house was a dangerous place. There were hundreds of ropes going down to the stage below. It was a long, long way down. Raoul and Christine sat in a dark corner, and Raoul took Christine's hands. Her face was white and tired. Listen, Raoul, she said quietly. I'm going to tell you everything, but this is our last meeting. I can never see you again. No, Christine, Raoul cried. I love you, and we… Shh, quietly. Perhaps he can hear us. He's everywhere in the opera house, Raoul. Who? What are you talking about, Christine? My angel of music. I couldn't meet you last Saturday because he came for me and took me away. I was in my dressing room in the opera house and suddenly he was there in front of me. I saw the voice for the first time. He wore black evening clothes and a mask over his face. He took me through many secret doors and passages, down, under the opera house. There is a lake down there, a big lake. The waters are black and cold. He took me across the lake in a boat to his house. He lives there, Raoul, in a house on the lake, under the opera house." Raoul stared at her. Was this beautiful Christine mad? Christine saw his face and said quickly, "It's true, Raoul, it's true. And he is the phantom of the opera. But he's not a ghost, he's not an angel of music, he's a man. His name is Eric, and he loves me. He wants me to be his wife." "No, Raoul, listen, there is more. He told me all this in his house, in a beautiful room. He said that no woman could ever love him because of his face. He was so unhappy. Then he took off his mask, and I saw his face." She began to cry, and Raoul put his arms around her. "Oh, Raoul, he has the most terrible face. It is so ugly. I wanted to scream and run away. But where could I run to? He has the face of a dead man, Raoul, but he is not dead. He has no nose, just two black holes in his yellow face. And his eyes, sometimes they are black holes, sometimes they have a terrible red light." She put her face in her hands for a second. Then she said, "I stayed in his house for 5 days. He was very good to me, and I felt sorry for him, Raoul. He wants me to love him, and I told him. No, Christine, no. You're going to be my wife. Come away with me at once, today. You can't go back to him." "But I must," Christine said quietly. "He knows about you, Raoul. He knows about us. He says he's going to kill you. I must go back to him." "Never," said Raoul. "I love you, Christine, and I'm going to kill this Eric." Eric, Eric, Eric. The word whispered round the opera house. Raoul and Christine stared. "What was that?" Raoul said, afraid. "Was that his voice? Where did it come from?" "I'm afraid, Raoul," Christine whispered. "I'm singing Margarita again on Saturday. What's going to happen?" "This," Raoul said. "After the opera on Saturday night, you and I are going away together. Come on, let's go down now. I don't like it up here." They went carefully along a dark passage to some stairs, then suddenly stopped. There was a man in front of them, a tall man in a long dark coat and a black hat. He turned and looked at them. "No, not these stairs," he said. "Go to the stairs at the front, and go quickly." Christine turned and ran. Raoul ran after her. "Who was that man?" he asked. "It's a Persian," Christine answered. "But who is he? What's his name? Why did he tell us to go to the front stairs?" "Nobody knows his name. He's just a Persian. He's always in the opera house. I think he knows about Eric, but he never talks about him. Perhaps he saw Eric on those stairs and wanted to help us." Hand in hand, they ran quickly down the stairs, through the passages, then more stairs and more passages. At one of the little back doors to the opera house, they stopped. "On Saturday night, then, after the opera," Raoul said, "I'm going to take you away and marry you." Christine looked up into his face. "Yes, Raoul." Then they kissed, there by the door of the opera house, their first kiss. Chapter 8. Where is Christine Daae? On Saturday morning, Comte Philippe looked across the breakfast table at his brother. "Don't do it, Raoul, please. All this talk about ghosts and phantoms, I think the girl is mad." "She's not mad, and I'm going to marry her," Raoul said. "She's only a little opera singer," Philippe said unhappily. "She's very young. Are you still going to love her in 10 or 20 years' time?" Raoul drank his coffee and did not answer. There were two more unhappy faces in the opera house, too. The directors now understood about OG. They didn't want any more accidents. Box 5 is free tonight for OG. Daae is singing Margarita, and here is 20,000 francs. Madame Giry can leave the money in box 5 for him. "Is that everything?" Monsieur Armand asked Monsieur Firmin. "It's a lot of money," Monsieur Firmin said unhappily. He thought for a minute. "What about some flowers in box 5? Madame Giry says OG likes flowers." "OG can bring his own flowers," shouted Monsieur Armand. The evening began well. The chandelier was now back in place with new ropes. All Paris was in the opera house. Everybody wanted to hear Christine Daae's voice again. People also knew about the love story between Christine Daae and the Vicomte of Chagny. There were no love secrets in Paris. People watched the Comte and the Vicomte in box 14 with interest. Young men from families like the Chagny did not marry opera singers. When Christine came onto the stage, her face was white and she looked afraid. But she sang like an angel. Ah, what a voice! All Paris was in love with Christine Daae. She began to sing the famous love song. Suddenly, every light in the opera house went out. For a second, nobody moved or spoke. Then a woman screamed, and all the lights came on again. But Christine Dyer was no longer on the stage. She was not behind the stage. She was not under the stage. Nobody could find her. The opera house went mad. Everybody ran here and there, shouted and called. In the director's office, people ran in and out. The police came and asked questions, but nobody could answer the questions. Monsieur Armand got angry and shouted, and Monsieur Firmin told him to be quiet. Then Madame Giry arrived in the office with her daughter Meg. Go away, woman, Monsieur Armand shouted. Monsieur, there are 3 people missing now, Madame Giry said. Meg, tell the directors your story. This was Meg's story. When the lights went out, we were just behind the stage. We heard a scream. I think it was Christine Dyer's voice. Then the lights came back on, but Christine wasn't there. We were very afraid, and we began to run back to our dressing room. There were people running everywhere. Then we saw the Vicomte de Chagny. His face was red, and he was very angry. Where's Christine? Where's Christine? He shouted. Suddenly, the Persian came up behind him and took his arm. He said something to the Vicomte, and they went into Christine Dyer's dressing room. Yes, and then? Monsieur Firmin said quickly. What happened next? Nobody knows. Meg's face was white. We looked into Christine Dyer's dressing room, but there was nobody there. Chapter 9. The House on the Lake. When the lights came on, Raoul ran. He ran down the stairs and along passages, through the opera house to the back of the stage. In the passage outside Christine's dressing room, a hand took his arm. What's the matter, my young friend? Where are you running to, so quickly? Raoul turned and saw the long face of the Persian under his black hat. Christine, Raoul said quickly. Eric's got her. Where is she? Help me. How do I get to his house on the lake? Come with me, said the Persian. They went quickly into Christine's dressing room. The Persian closed the door and went to the big mirror on one wall. There's only one door into this room, Raoul began. Wait, the Persian said. He put his hands on the big mirror, first here, then there. For a minute nothing happened. Then the mirror began to move and turn, and a big dark hole opened in it. Raoul stared. Quick, come with me, but be careful, the Persian said. I know Eric, I understand his secrets. Put your right hand up near your head, like this, and keep it there all the time. But why? Raoul asked. Remember Joseph Bouquet and the rope around his neck? Eric is a clever man with ropes in the dark. They went down, 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 under the opera house. They went through secret doors in the floors, then along passages and down dark stairs. The Persian listened carefully all the time for strange noises. When do we get to the lake? Raoul whispered. We're not going by the lake. Eric watches it all the time. No, we go round the lake and get into Eric's house from the back. I know some secret doors. Soon they were there. In the dark, the Persian felt the wall carefully with his hands. Ah, here it is, he whispered. The wall moved under his hands and a small door opened. Very quietly they went through, and then the door closed behind them. They could not get out. Inside the room it was very dark. They waited and listened. The Persian put his hands on the wall. Oh no, he whispered. It was the wrong door. This is Eric's torture room, the room of mirrors. We are dead men, Vicomte de Chagny, dead men. At first Raoul did not understand, but he soon learned. The lights came on, and they heard a man's laugh. Eric knew they were there. The room was all mirrors, walls, floor, ceiling. There were pictures in the mirrors of trees and flowers and rivers. The pictures moved and danced in front of their eyes, and the room was hot, got hotter and hotter and hotter. Raoul was thirsty, hot and thirsty, and the rivers in the pictures danced and laughed at him. He closed his eyes, but the rivers still danced. Water, he needed water, but the mirrors laughed at him. Soon he could not move or speak or open his eyes. He was not thirsty now, just tired, so tired. Oh, Christine, I'm sorry, he thought. I wanted to help you, and now I'm dying. Through a mirror in the wall, Christine watched her lover in the torture room. Behind her, Eric stood, with his hands on her arms. He's dying, Christine, dying. Watch him carefully. No, don't close your eyes. Watch him. Christine could not speak. She wanted to scream, but no words came. Then she found her voice again. How can you do this, Eric? Why don't you kill me? Because I love you, Christine. Marry me and be my wife and love me. Then Raoul and the Persian can live. Slowly, Christine turned. She looked into Eric's terrible, ugly face and spoke again, very quietly. Yes, Eric, from this minute I am your wife. She put her arms around Eric's neck and kissed him slowly and lovingly on his ugly mouth. Then she took her arms away and said slowly, Poor, unhappy Eric. Eric stared at her. You kissed me, he whispered. I didn't ask you, but you kissed me, freely. Oh, Christine, my angel, that was my first kiss from a woman. Even my mother never kissed me. She gave me my first mask when I was 2 years old. She turned her face away from me every time I came near her. Eric put his ugly face in his hands and cried. Then he went down on the floor at Christine's feet. You are free, Christine, free. Go away and marry your Raoul and be happy. But remember Eric, sometimes. Go now, quickly. Take Raoul and the Persian and go. Chapter 10. Madame Giry visits the Persian. For weeks, all Paris talked about that night at the opera. Everybody asked questions, but nobody knew the answers. Where was Christine Daae? Where was the Vicomte de Chagny? Were they alive or dead? And the Phantom of the Opera? Some weeks after the famous night, Madame Giry went out one afternoon to a small house near the Rivoli Gardens. She went in and up the stairs to some rooms at the top of the house. The Persian opened the door. Madame Giry looked at him. My friend, you know the answers. Please tell me, are they alive or dead? Come in, the Persian said quietly. They sat down on some chairs by the window and looked out across the Rivoli Gardens. Yes, the Persian said slowly, the phantom is dead now. He did not want to live any longer. I saw his body 3 days ago, and because of that, I can talk to you about him. He cannot kill me now. So the phantom was really a man? Madame Giry asked. Yes, his name was Eric. That was not his real name, of course. He was born in France, but I knew him in Persia. He was a famous builder, and I worked with him there. For a time I was his friend, but not for long. When he came to Paris, I came after him. I wanted to watch him. He was a very clever, very dangerous man. He could be in 2 or 3 places at the same time. He could be in one place and his voice could come from another place. He could do many clever things with ropes and mirrors and secret doors. You see, he helped to build the opera house. He built secret passages underground and his secret house on the lake. He could not live in the outside world because of his terrible, ugly face. Unhappy Eric. We can feel sorry for him, Madame Giry. He was so clever and so ugly. People screamed when they saw his face, and so he lived this strange life, half man, half phantom. But he was a man. In the end, he wanted a woman's love. He stopped, and Madame Giry asked quietly, And Christine Daae and Vicomte Raoul, what happened to them? The Persian smiled. Ah, yes, what happened to young Raoul and the beautiful Christine? Who knows? Nobody in Paris ever saw Raoul and Christine again. Perhaps they took a train to the north and lived a quiet, happy life together there. Perhaps Christine's wonderful voice is still singing somewhere in the cold and beautiful mountains of Norway. Who knows?